Okay, so hi everyone, and welcome to tonight's Kaurs Reimagine digital gathering. Um, Thank you for taking time to be here in the community with us. If you weren't here yesterday on the IG Live, we had delved a little bit into this topic of motherhood, but we were specifically looking at it through a mother and daughterhood lens. But tonight we're going to be incorporating some of our writers from the book and talking about their perspective. So throughout the discussion, the chat will be open. Please feel free to, share your reflections or your reactions or whatever resonates with you. And this is a space for everyone, and we are happy to hear your voice. And Tony will get us started on introducing the theme of the conversation and introducing the writers and guests.
Thanks, Mayor. So, we really wanted to create a roundtable discussion, and I think we invited a team of different perspectives, different age children, different situations, and it really just adds to the conversation when we have all these different perspectives coming to the conversation. So the title of the event is Reimagining Motherhood Together, a chance for us to learn from one another and to focus on how we are mothering and how that has been different from the way we were mothered. And even how we see our children, one day parenting. So creating this space, and we're excited to hear all your different perspectives. We have in this conversation, we have myself, we have the Kaurs Reimagine intern, Merrick Gore, who you just heard from. We have three of our Kaurs Reimagine writers tonight. We have Indra Kaur Aluvalia, and we have Raj Narendra Kaur and Gurpreet Badam. I'm going to quickly stop my share so you can see all of their faces better. And 1 second. Okay, so as I mentioned, three writers. Gurpreet is the writer of The Neural Divine in the book. Raj Narind had the story Layers of Love, and Indira's story is titled The Power Within. I'm actually going to let everybody take a couple minutes and properly introduce themselves, but I wanted to point out that we also have two guests tonight from outside the Kaurs Reimagine team. They are Sona and Arvinder from Ek Sikh Mom. And Ek Sikh Mom is a online Facebook community geared towards sick parents and parents-to-be with nearly 3,000 followers. The group just had their 1 year anniversary, so congratulations to you. And we have been hosted by them previously in a conversation, so we're excited to have them join us for tonight's conversation. So that being said, I wanted to take a couple minutes just to give everyone a little background on who we are. And also, I think it's helpful for the audience to know how old our children are, or just a little background so they know what angle we're coming from, since we are all at different stages. So I'm just going to call on people around my screen. And if you could just take 2 minutes to introduce yourselves and give us a little background. Raj Sharon, do you want to go ahead and start?
Sure, Vaj Khalsa, Vaj Fateh ji. So my ages of I have three boys. One just turned 20 in January. Another just turned 18 in April. And my youngest just turned 13 a couple of weeks ago. So various phases, various ranges. I'm so blessed. I just love them all. So nothing more. I don't know what else to say. That's my introduction.
Thank you. Sona, do you want to go ahead? Oh, you're muted.
Yeah.
Oh, there.
First of all, thank you all for being here. The authors, the Kaurs Reimagine team, and of course, Arvinder and just all of you. It's really nice to be here. So yeah, I can start off and say I'm a mom of three. I have an 18-year-old who's just going off to college shortly. And then I have a 14-year-old son and I have a 10-year-old son. My daughter is the eldest, 18. So yeah, motherhood is a great journey.
Thank you. Arvinder, do you want to go ahead?
Sure, thank you so much. We're really grateful for the time that we're spending here together tonight, talking about the things that impact us most on a daily basis. So I'm a mother of two. I have a 14-year-old daughter and a 13-year-old son. So one in high school, one in middle school, although they're like 18 months apart. So their challenges are sometimes very similar and sometimes extremely opposite. So navigating the two. It's been interesting.
Thank you. Indira?
Yes, looking forward to this discussion with everybody and learning from each other. My daughter is 23. She just graduated from GW on Saturday. And my son is just finished his third year. So he's 20 in college, I should say. Third year in anything. Yeah.
Thank you. Gurpreet.
Wajka Khalsa, Wajika Fateh. Thank you. Really looking forward to this discussion as well. And, for me, motherhood is very challenging because I feel like I'm always looking at it from the perspective of the duality of life and death in every aspect. And I have two sets of twins, my one living and one eternal. And so my living twins are a boy and girl. They're 24 years old, although in my eyes, I will always see them as toddlers. And my eternal twins, two boys who passed. And so motherhood for me is a constant struggle between life and death, and how to be a mother for both my sets of twins, even one set who's no longer here, but then motherhood still pulls me.
Thank you, Gurpreet. Okay, and myself, I have a 16-year-old and 13-year-old boys, and then a 10-year-old daughter. So I think all of us are kind of, in the teen/young adult parent category. So I think that is a positive. We have many years and stages behind us, and we've lived through a lot. So while we're on that topic, I'd love to kick off with the hard stuff. Let's talk about some of the challenges that we face as mothers. And I'll leave this open-ended. It can be a challenging situation you're in now. It could be reflecting on maybe the stage of parenting you felt was most challenging. And the whole purpose of asking this question is just to be able to provide insight to others who may be in that situation, in that stage. Whether you're still facing the challenge or you kind of conquered the challenge and are on the other side, free, open-ended question just to see how you're feeling. And I'll let anybody jump in. Feel free to treat this just as if we were out sitting at coffee. I'm not going to call on anyone. So if you have something to say or you want to piggyback or comment on someone else's comment, this floor is open. Don't make me call.
Yeah, I'll start it off. No, don't. Let's not get awkward. So right off the bat, apart from obvious, things like your appearances and practices and language and the things that we have, talked about amongst ourselves before, I think time for me lately has something that's come up over and over again, that do I have the time to teach all of the things that I want to teach as a mother? Because all of a sudden it's like teenager hit, and now I'm getting closer to, Sona stage where one is almost out the door, literally, So I feel as I'm getting closer, I'm like, do I have enough time to teach them? And have I done well enough with their practices? And do they know who to call on and when to call on Vaheguru? And has that been enough? And so I was thinking about this more and more, and I felt like as time goes on, I feel the more that I am aligned to my practice and the more that I am aligned with what I need to do in order for me to feel good and well and present, the more that they are able to see it as well. And they will eventually see that, oh, yes, our mom did this or our dad did this. Because I often go back and without even knowing it, sometimes I think about what my parents were doing at this age and how I was at this time of stage with my parents. So I think naturally I've kind of thought, is there a way that I can be better at everything that I'm doing. And not as a pressure, but in a way that I'm being watched for sure. I've known this for a very long time, but am I doing all of the things that I can to help the children understand that their connection with Waheguru is above all, number one, foremost in any chapter of any life, in any daily conversation? Am I showing them? And by doing it myself, and maybe even more so. So just to kick it off.
I can jump in. It's interesting because it's something, Arvinder, that has been a question for me. And just 2 nights ago, I was having a conversation with both my kids, and I realized as I was saying this to them, that the foundation of raising them has been established at 23 and 20. And you've got, and that was a pivotal moment for me where I had to acknowledge it to myself. They're young adults. I've raised them to be independent thinkers. They are capable of making their decisions, be it from a dharam or a karam perspective. And I basically was saying to them, the foundation is done. Arman, with one more year coming your way with college, I would feel like that would cement this foundation. And I think what's important for me is to know that I have done everything I knew to do. And I really take your point that how do I continue to model the learnings that I have received, including strength and vulnerability, success and failure, spirituality and religion, right? So they can form their own path. So yeah, I feel like I'm going to start to try to let go. I'm not quite there yet, but I'm recognizing that at the stage that they're at, the foundation, God willing, is in place.
Yeah, I
Uh,
think to that point, sorry, Indira Ji, I'd like to jump in there, but yeah, that right now I'm trying to let go of my firstborn, my 18-year-old daughter, and there's so much apprehension that I didn't actually know I was gonna have. Honestly, I was just like, oh, this is gonna be a breeze. She's so well prepared for college. But I'm starting to feel this anxiety these last few weeks, and she's going to a great college. She's actually going to be staying in the same state as us. And I'm like, why am I feeling this anxiety that has she got all the tools she needs to navigate without us, without being in our home and being in a new environment, being around new people? So, same as you're saying, like at this point, I just hope I've given her that foundation she needs to navigate those internal, external battles and whatever she's facing. Because again, you're not just, a girl going to college, you're a Sikh American girl going to college, which also changes the, dynamic as well. So I can agree with you. There's worry.
What both of you are mentioning, I think there's so much common ground. And so a theme that's occurring for me, you're trying to model living, you're trying to model learning and letting go. And for me, what's emerging is, how do I model acceptance of hookum? How do I model integration of joy and suffering and that balance? How do I model that? And um, and how and how do I balance that with my own grief and sorrow and joy so that neither one consumes me, um, and that I have a balanced life? And I think the greatest pressure I feel like I put on myself is that I have to model those qualities, that I'm being watched by my kids, no matter young or old, and my 20-year-old twins now, they've witnessed so many ups and downs in their lives, in my lives, and they grew up questioning, why is this happening to us? And all this time, I feel like I don't have a lot of answers for them. And I'm discovering the journey for myself and fulfilling those answers that I seek. But then I can't necessarily provide that for them because they have their own journey, they have their own lessons to learn. And for me, that's the hardest thing to watch is I wish there was a wand where I could take away all their struggles, every barrier. I wish I could remove it, any hardship that I had, I wish they didn't have to go through. Yet at the same time, that's my journey is what makes me who I am today. It makes me the individual I am. It is my experience, my joy, my suffering, everything encompassed in is it's what makes me who I am. And I think my greatest fear is usually of I don't want my children to suffer. And and I feel helpless many times in that domain. Yet at the same time, the acceptance of Hookham and just knowing that we're all taken care of. There's a plan for everybody, but it takes such a leap of faith and trust that has to come from experience, which can for someone, who's older like I am, but not as easy for someone young as a child. So that's the part of the experience they have to live. So I think for me, the biggest challenge is that feeling of helplessness of how do I let go of that feeling of I can't really change what they experience and how they experience it. And I wish I could make things better. Yet at the same time, I have to model that pressure of being, I hope they don't see me a certain way. I hope they don't see me crying. Or if I'm joyful, I hope they see me that I appreciate life and I'm grateful. They see my gratitude and how to remain humble and to be able to appreciate what we have. Um, and and that's my greatest challenge because no matter what we say or do, children look at how we live our life, but most of their own lessons are going to come from their own living. Um, and my greatest challenge is wishing for that magic wand to make things easier, better, and make it a smoother path. Um, so that's where I'm at right now.
I think one thing you said was, not wanting them to see your lows and just wanting to see your highs. But I think when I look back at my own mother's lows and highs, I've learned so much from her lows. And it gave me so much respect for what she went through. And I think it's allowed me to kind of figure out how I want to live my life. So the struggles that she faced, I see, and I kind of avoid those situations. And had I not seen her go through them or seen how she handled them, I may not have had that perspective. And I think it kind of shielded me, but still being exposed to it taught me the lessons I needed to protect myself from getting into those same situations. Rajnarend, I think I interrupted you.
No, you didn't. Okay, so the question, if I just go back and just tell me if I'm correct here, it's the challenge as a mother that we faced either in the past or now in the future. So I'm going to go, I think, to the past, which I've heard a lot of mothers recently, I think due to the fact of Kaurs Reimagine and reading the stories inside, a lot of soon-to-be mothers, a lot of young mothers, and a lot of young.
Are you upset? What do you need?
A lot of young women are facing or questioning is the working mom's guilt. So I used to work at Wall Street. I would get up at 5, drop my kids off. I was blessed. I had my parents live nearby, so I could drop my kids off. But nonetheless, the working mom's guilt was there. I would drop them off at 6 in the morning, catch the bus to New York City, 2 hours, get into the city, work. If I'm late, it wasn't a problem because my mom is my backbone. And she was like, no worries, I got them, do their homework, give them dinner. But it was me feeling guilty that I was coming home at 9 o'clock and just literally putting them to bed. So while they were young, I was not really present. I was working, I was traveling, I was doing my career. So I think that was probably the biggest challenge. And again, luckily, I had my parents, but a lot of people have been talking to me about this, and they're not maybe that as fortunate. So they have them at a daycare, and then they end up calling a neighbor to pick them up because they're stuck in traffic or something. I mean, we live on the East Coast here, so it's the commute is horrible, especially if you're going into New York on a daily basis. And now everyone's mandated to go back 5 days a week. So it's a lot. And I think that to me was the biggest challenge in how do I amplify the time I have with them and make it meaningful so that they know that I'm present when I'm present and I'm not thinking about work or I'm doing something else. So it was a lot of conscious decisions of being there when I was there and really just mothering them when I could.
And I love how much you wrote about that in your story. And I think you gave such great perspective for others who are in your situation. And yeah, your advice was really great. And one thing I always come back to in your story is kind of what kicked off this discussion is the whole role modeling what you want your kids to do and walking the walk. And that is my challenge. I actually, my sarcastic personality comes out with my oldest, who inherited the same personality and multiplied it by a few. But I always tell him, do as I say, not as I do, because it's hard. It's hard to model how you want your kids to be while still being the Uber mom and dealing with this and dealing with that and dinner. And it's challenging. I'm sure we all can relate. I'm going to move on to our second question, which is, how do you return to a state of sahaj and sukh when you experience uncertainty within your families, especially with your children? So whoever wants to kick us off, feel free. Go ahead, Sona.
I won't make you call it out. So, yeah, I had a couple of thoughts when I was kind of, you know, contemplating on this question, because I think it's been different things for me at different stages of my motherhood. I think in the beginning it was just like, okay, I'm breastfeeding, I'm listening to Kirtan, or when I was pregnant and I'd be, not tired and just not my usual self, I would have Kirtan playing in the car or something, or either doing part in the morning, just kind of bring me back to base. So the anxieties would go away. But now as I'm getting older, I feel like the last maybe decade, I think I've been not only listening to Kirtan, but really reading those translations and really delving deep into each word. And sometimes there's a Shabad that will connect with me. And then when I listen to it again, like later, if I'm going through some challenge, it will connect to me differently. So that's been really interesting for me. I feel like that is definitely something that brings me back to the hedge, brings me back to that comfort feeling that I've got this, okay, today wasn't such a good day, but tomorrow will be better. I just feel like I get that little pat on my back from that divine being that, okay, you don't have to be perfect. It's okay if you did something today that wasn't quite what you thought would be good. Like you always hold yourself up to such a high standard that have to be that perfect mom. I have to be perfect today. And there's going to be days when you're not perfect. And, I mean, what is perfection actually? I mean, we all have our, imperfections, and that's what makes us us. And we shouldn't, hold ourselves to that standard of somebody else. Like, oh, this mom's doing that. Why am I not doing that? It's it's organic for every mom, your experiences. And so I feel like, yes, Kirtan definitely is an anchor for me and always has been. And sometimes if there's a question that's bothering me regarding a challenge that I'm having with the kids, or a question even with family, families can be complicated. If I have a question that's kind of bothering me in my mind, then I just take a hook'em, and that normally does speak to me and tells me how I should react or how I shouldn't react. And just kind of, how we were talking about earlier, like, joy and happiness and suffering and pain, and just kind of be even throughout all of that. It's very difficult, it's very challenging, but I think Gurbani is really a good guide for that. That's just me personally.
I
I'm
think,
happy.
Sona,
Go
I
ahead.
feel like it's not about always like being okay with the hookup either, right? Sometimes we find ourselves, we're like, okay, really, why? Why is this happening? Or I wish it were something different. But I think for me, it has been about um, finding finding the peace in the things that we can't control. And that has been something that brings me, back to calm or center, or trying to go forward with whatever situation is with the most grace as possible. Which also kind of ties into the earlier question about how to find that. It's like just to model that is to do it. And I think that I try to accept hukam, and have trust in that, that that this, it's not just about accepting it, or it's not just about being passively, well, whatever is going to be is be, but actually really feeling acceptance and surrender in the situations that motherhood has uh, brought me to. So I think I think Gurmukhi has, or Gurbani has invited me more and more, as you said, the same thing in the past recent years, more so, not just like making a checklist like Nitnem kar liya, or Path Kita. There was a time when I didn't do that either, but just to find like, what is it that can bring me back into that, to the fold of trust, and be like, okay, I don't know what's up ahead, and I don't know why things happened and the way they happened, but just to trust wholly and wholeheartedly that this is the way. And that is the challenge sometimes, how to return back to that state of sedge for me.
Yeah, I think that was really like I resonated with that a lot as someone who's not a mother myself, obviously. I've been thinking a lot about what it means to witness like motherhood from the outside, especially ever after a discussion yesterday. And from my perspective, and someone who's like never had to care for another person in that way, I don't obviously don't have lived experience, but I've noticed that like motherhood seems to have this tension of like, caring and knowing when to discipline and knowing when to control. And I wonder here if like we're talking about Sahej, if the real spiritual work, like as a Sikh woman, is letting go of that control while still showing up with presence and love. And I do think a lot of daughters sort of carry a kind of memory of motherhood in a way, like we witness it and we internalize it, and sometimes we, like Sonia said, repeat it, or we have issues with it later on, or we look up to it later on. So when I hear this question about returning to Sahej and like dealing with uncertainty, I think about how uncertainty sort of impacts everybody involved. And as a daughter, I've learned that, my reactions also shape every emotional space with my mother too. And I think Sahaj is something that you have to cultivate together, even across, generational lines. So I think the goal here isn't to like necessarily return to Sahaj, I think, or Sukh as like fixed states. I think it's more about recognizing like the undercurrents that can exist even in moments of uncertainty. And I would say that Sikhi basically states that these conditions are never perfect, and it's always about cultivating acceptance and not being passive to it, and also just grounding ourselves in that hookup, even when things like, feel chaotic. Um, and I think especially in parent-child relationships, it always reveals and exposes like that limit of control, and like it induces anxiety in both people. And I see that in my mom too. And I think now in the present day of age where you can like, go on your phone and see Life 360, all of these things like totally change how our brains work. But I think begins where that, endless control ends, like ends. And yeah, I think that spiritual challenge is being okay and being present with that uncertainty. So I think you hit the nail on the head, Arvinder, with saying, being grounded with that hookup.
I can jump in. I'm reminded of growing up and very young, and my dad would always say to me and to my brother, "Whose child are you?" And the answer was always Vaheguru, right? And I didn't understand what he was doing when he was doing it. It was a nice little game. But what he did was ingrain in my brother and me that we belong to a higher being. And these temporal relations we have with our parents are as custodians for that higher being for a very short period of time. And I haven't done it as well as my father did it with me, with my kids, but that's something that I have tried to do. I've been a single mother since they were 6 and 8. I started my journey with advanced breast cancer when they were 2 years younger than that. So life in and of itself has had a lot of uncertainty, as we've talked about, Gurpreet, in terms of the ups and downs of life. And in that scenario, when you realize or accept even that your role is very short-lived, and you are appealing at all times to Vaikuruji to protect, to safeguard, to nurture your children in every space, in every way, in every cell, it's powerful, right? Because there's nothing I can do to make their lives better other than just wish it. So if I put that faith in where it belongs, there's more capacity for me to get to that place of humility, right? I think as parents, sometimes we think we own our children. And that's a fallacy that I don't think we all recover from, least of all the children. And, we've all been there where I've made the choice, and many of us have made the choice in how we raise our children. So when we give them the ability to think as individuals, that means that choices are their own as well. And the suffering or the benefit or the gains are what is in their path that they have to walk through. As a parent, to take a back seat and not be able to jump in when they're on that edge of danger is probably the most difficult thing. And I don't quite know how to bite my tongue every time, right? So the other part that I've been trying to focus on is, while I respect them as individuals, because I respect them as individuals, I cannot judge them all the time, right? That would be unfair, because by judging them, I am saying, do as I want. So that's a struggle on an ongoing basis, because it comes from a place of love rather than judgment. But as daughters will tell you, or sons will tell you, it comes across as judgment to them. And the last part of this is self-forgiveness, if I may put it that way. I mean, we make mistakes as parents all the time, all the time. There's no book that you can comprehensively get all the answers on. Yes, we have a lot of tools, but that place of saying, okay, I messed up here, kid. Let's have a conversation about this. And then learning to forgive yourself so you don't operate from a perspective of guilt, which removes your perspective of seeing things more clearly. But it's, much as they're older, and I think somebody said, it's hard to see them. I think so, Sonia, you might have said to see them as beyond their toddlers, that, the vulnerable toddlers that we picture them as, versus having the confidence in Vaheguru that he's raising them anyway and protecting them anyway. God willing. Mhm.
I'll jump in. I've been turning a lot more internally. Um, and what I mean by that is that sehaj, that state of uh, inner equilibrium when we align with the divine order or hukam, and sukh being the peace that flows from that alignment. And easier said than done. And I certainly admire everyone who is able to do that. But for me, I was searching for how do I had so much inner turmoil. I was seeking for how do I get to that place of that place of self-compassion. That's where I needed to be, because whether to forgive myself, to forgive others, to be able to see the one and all, you have to be in a place where you're open enough and you're capable of pausing from the chaos of life, everything around us, just to take a moment or a few moments and giving yourself that permission to pause, like Rachnaran said, being such a busy mom. Um, and how do you be there? And for me, the hardest part was I don't know how to do that. Someone tell me, how do I do that? What are some of those practical skills? So I actually ended up Googling self-compassion and how, and, whether it's having a mani-pedi or, whatever was not doing it for me. That was um, I needed a more deeper sense of self-compassion. And the Google search brought me to Stanford's Center for Compassion and Altruism, where I ended up learning a lot more about, in very unexpected ways, how do you cultivate compassion and how you bring that into your life. So I ended up spending a year in the program learning just how to be forgiving, um, and self-compassion and love for others, or compassion for others, begins with ourselves first. So I had to learn to forgive myself. And a lot of that brought me to compassion cultivation exercises, which I highly recommend. I think there's so many excellent programs. There's 4-week, 8-week, 11-week cultivations, but I needed that entire year. I'm a tough student. And and when we pause and we're aware of our own energy and working on our breath, and we can sit with our nervous system. Instead of being in a survival mode, we can go to the calm mode. And that's where I find my peace. So now when I'm in the middle of turmoil, I have to remember my breathing exercises, that really the focus of that is to take me within so that I can truly search for those answers that I'm never going to find on the outside. They're all internal. And I have to dig deeper and deeper and let my thoughts come. They may go, and see what the divine wants to bring me in that moment. What is my hukam in that moment? Um, and I use Gurbani as as resonance, as my sort of the uh, when you talk about quantum physics or the breath work, and we're really all energy, we're one. Um, you hear the word vibration quite a bit. So from Gurbani, there's so much healing. There's so much evidence that music has healing properties. So I really look for whether it's a tune or a rag or a certain instrument where I feel like I can be one with it and it really moves me. Um, then that's the Shabbat I will pick, and I will just listen to it every single day over and over and over because it what anchors me to the outside world and helps me go within so that I can reconcile whatever issues that I'm dealing with. And for me, my journey was really important for me to have those practical ways of being able to do that, because sometimes, a lot of the ideas seem so far-fetched. How do you actually get there? And it's a work in progress. For me, it's one step at a time, working towards it. But really just adding that to my tool belt as practical things that I can do. So I highly recommend if you're if this is something that you feel might be right for you, look up compassion cultivation practices, and um, uh, and hopefully it'll help.
I guess I'll add to the practical aspects. For me, it is running. I just run. I drown myself in just running for miles. And then the other one that I drown myself in is I just do kirtan. I go into Guruji's room and I just sing for hours, and my entire family knows I'm stressed. That's how I handle stress. Either I run or I do kirtan. Um, I will say it's changed. One aspect has been added that I did not do um, when I was younger, as like pre-marriage or even after marriage. I've added now Sajvad. So that's something that is not me screaming at the top of my lungs doing kirtan or running for breath. It's just me calmly doing bhat, which has added a different dimension. But again, I think my family knows if she's stressed, she's doing one of these three things. So my way of handling stress is probably more physical than philosophical.
I can definitely piggyback off of that because for me it's walking. Like now that the kids are old enough that I can exit the house without having to worry about someone hurting themselves, I'm like, I need a break. I can continue yelling as I would have, when they were younger and I had very little control over myself, but now I'm like, I'm gonna go outside, take a walk, and that always helps center me again. I think that a lot of you gave a lot of great advice, so I hope people can pick and choose and try what works for them. So at this point, I'm going to pass it over to Sona from Ek Sikh Mom, and she has a few questions for our writers. Again, feel free to jump in, leave this open-ended and a roundtable conversation. So Sona, go ahead.
Thanks, Sonia. So yeah, I'll just dive right in. By the way, this whole roundtable and conversation has been amazing. So much advice here. So the first question I have actually is for Gurpreet Benji, the author of Neuro Divine. How has your mother's love given you strength in times of uncertainty and challenges? You write about in your chapter about your mother taking care of you when you were at the most vulnerable after a terrible traumatic accident. To me, that's a perfect example of your mother's enduring strength. Um, can you delve into that more?
Yeah, thank you. Um, in retrospect, I learned a lot about motherhood and appreciation for my own mom when I was writing the story. And through the process, I was forced to sit down and think about what happened and analyze it and look at it critically from different angles, different aspects. And because my mom refuses to talk about it, and she, even till this day, she will completely shut down the topic. It's still so traumatic for her. And becoming a mom, I think I finally understood that it wasn't just my trauma, it's my mom's trauma too. It
Mhm.
probably more so because thankfully I don't remember a lot of it. Uh, but unfortunately she does. She was there. And um, and and moms are expected to nurture, to care, to provide. Um, and that's, supposedly the job description, right? That's just what you're supposed to do. And I think we take that for granted because um so well, because I'm thinking, why did I grow up hearing from everyone and everyone telling me, "Oh, you're a daddy's girl." Yes, I am. I was completely spoiled. But no one ever said, "You're a mommy's girl."
Mm,
Why is it that the boys are mama's boys and the girls are mo daddy's girls?
right.
And that really disturbed me when I was writing the story because I thought, my dad was working majority of the times. It was really my mom who was around the entire time. She's the one who took care of me. I'm alive because of her and because of her seva by my side. Not something that seva that you do at the gurdwara or for others, but seva that she dedicated herself to for her child and to nurture. And why have I not ever appreciated that? And and I think just um, journaling through this entire experience really gave me an appreciation of how underappreciated my mom is, as I think most moms are. Because we take it for granted. Yeah, that's what a mom's supposed to do. But she didn't have to. She doesn't have to, but she did. And um, and I can't imagine the strength and the fervor it takes to be able to to be so quietly resilient. I what I remember of those days, when she was caring for me, is a strong face, is a calm face. She was my strength. She was there for me. I didn't see anxiety. I didn't see anything that would make me think, "Oh, am I going to be okay? Am I even going to survive this?" But everything that she did was that pillar of strength for me, and I kick myself in the butt for not recognizing it sooner. And why do we not appreciate our moms? Maybe it's just me, maybe all of you do, but in general, when I see around me, I think motherhood is just something you're just expected to do it. Um, and um, I'm probably derailing for the question from the question. So, uh, so for so my mom's care was not just medical, it was intuitive. And
Mhm.
to me, that's divinity. She's my mom to me, her unwavering strength, her unconditional love, and and making me believe that she's really the only one that I needed.
Right.
That's divine. To me, that's divinity. That's she's got to me. Like when you say Manu Rab Dikta, I see Rab in my mom. And I have a completely total outlook on this amazing, amazing person. Um, and at the same time, I see myself how short I fall from that standard. It's such an impossible high standard. So, and it also gives me appreciation for where motherhood and my mom, because I don't know if I could really be that strength of pillar that she was for me, if I could be that for anyone else. I don't know. Um, but but yeah, it just opened my eyes really to what moms endure and
Mhm.
and how they persist in their love for us.
It's beautiful. Would anybody else like to share a strength that your mother has given you that you have carried forward in your own journey as a mom?
I just wanted to say, Gurpreet, word for word what you were saying about being daddy's girl. I mean, this is a thought, exactly what you said, that I've had for the past year that keeps cropping up because I am that person who's like, I'm daddy's girl. I look like my dad. I act like my dad. I got this from my dad and that from my dad. And I've always been very proud of that because he was my cheerleader. He was my vocal
Mhm.
cheerleader. He was the one constantly telling me he was proud of me, pushing me, etc. But when you said your mom was that quiet resilience, I was like, that was my mom. She was the one who was refilling my water bottle when she came to stay with me when I had my babies, while I was breastfeeding. And she was the one who quietly convinced my dad to let me marry who I wanted to marry. But she doesn't get the credit, right? Vocally, I'm still daddy's girl. So I need to do a better job of expressing that to her because you're right. They are divine. Thank you for that.
I just had one quick thing that I want to say. I thought that was really interesting about kind of giving the credit to the dad constantly, and it made me think of like one thing that happened specifically like at my house was my mom had come like from work and she's a lawyer and she had a long day and she has two kids and she like gone to the gym that day, did everything. She had prepped meals for us like the night before, and my grandma came over and she's obviously, very traditional. And the first thing she asked my mom was like, "Oh, you're not going to make fresh dinner for the kids?" And my mom was like, "Would you ever ask my brother that? Would you ever ask, your own sons that? You would only ever ask, me that." And it really speaks to the insane burden I think that moms nowadays have. Like we talked about this yesterday, but it's just they're expected to do all of it at once, and the dads always, always, always get the like high five or like, "Oh, you guys, you dropped off the kids to school," something like that. Something so simple. And I've always noticed that growing up, and I think, like you said, it takes so long to have that outside perspective of your mom and see her woman to woman. And I'm definitely still going through that. Um, but it is hard to live up to that expectation. And I think that generation had so many things that they accomplished and were able to accomplish like in such little time that it is a huge challenge. But yeah, I love that note.
Anybody else want to share?
I want to add that just as Waheguru gave the strength to our moms to get through the things that are unthinkable that your children have to go through, and our mom, I resonate with Gurpreet's story, that the strength that Waheguru gave these exceptionally strong women, because not everybody has to go through that unique kind of caring in a very life and death manner for their children. That strength is from Vaheguru, and if we can trust that that's where the strength came from, we can continue to trust that we are going to get the strength that we need to get through the things that we need to get through. And I think part of the journey for us when we're healing through the things of, I don't think I measure up to that kind of a mom, or the things, or even healing from the traumas, is the journey that we are going to pass on what our children, need. And whether in our opinions we fall short or we hit the mark, it's what they need in order for them to get through their journeys, that is, written for them.
Definitely, definitely so true. I'm gonna go on to the next question, just because it's time. So the next question is for Rajnarendra Kaur, regarding your chapter, The Lures of Love. This was so beautifully written, as well, and you write about teaching children the fundamentals of Sikhism, how to have Sikhi as a base to face challenges in life, internal and external. Your quote, "I know they will face struggles in their lives, both internally and externally in the world." Could you expand on that, and just how as mothers can we manifest this from the very beginning? Just even from my own perspective, like what should be in their toolbox to navigate that?
Um, so it's a loaded question.
It is.
I think I drew a lot on my experience, being born in New York and raised in Jersey on the Jersey Shore and being the only Sikh in school. So, um, and I think I looked back and saw definitely I had, you know, internal and external struggles growing up, both within the community and within the Sikh community, within my local community at school. And so the struggles are going to be there regardless. And one of the things I'll reference Indra. So Indra mentioned her dad always said, "Whose child are you?" That to me is an excellent question. And that's laying the foundation as a toddler and continuing that up. If she was to say that to her children now, I'm sure she'll still get the smile and she'll get Vaheguru. I did the same with my children. I think in the story I mentioned, when I would wash their hair and I'm combing their hair and I would say, okay, who gave you your Val? And as they were growing up, they would see Val on my arms or my legs, and they would say, "Oh my God, Mom, Vaiguruji loves you." And I say, "Okay, you do your part, and Vaiguruji will love you as much." And then they started getting their Val, and they were like, "Oh, Vaiguruji's loving me, right?" It's a game, it's a thing, but it's laying that foundation of them knowing that Vaiguru is with them, right? I also I didn't realize that my perspective was maybe not so common. I saw Sikhi and still see Sikhi in everything, in every little thing. And in the story I mentioned it, I see it in Kung Fu Panda, I see it in Ninjago, I saw it in Braveheart when I was growing up, which was a big movie. I see it when, we just traveled to Europe and we saw Sikhi and everything. Just today, okay, just now, actually, about 2 hours ago, I drove my son to a class and we passed a truck. And on the back of the truck, of course, I saw the Kunda. We're in New York, New Jersey, and we have truck drivers all over. So I saw the Kunda and I sped up, I slowed down. We looked at the driver. I'm like, he's sick. My son got all excited, gave the fateh. I said, did he see you? He said, yeah. Then, of course, I slow down and do a little nod. And it was just that thing, right? And that beautiful, just that instant was so so much contentment, so much satisfaction that my son was so proud. I was so proud just to see another Sikh, right? That to me, that love that we have is ingrained in all of us. It's just really just nurturing that, right? And kind of seeing that one in everyone, whether they're Sikh or not, right? And I think that foundation was started probably by my parents and I didn't see it. And if I could give an ounce or do an ounce of what they did for me, I would be so blessed, right? For me, I lived a Rara side time away from my parents. So that's how they learned Bhat. But it was a conscious decision that I would ask them about their day and not quickly do it, but then we would go into Dada Sahib, and it was the norm. Then they learned that. That was the gift now that they have, that they can now anywhere go and do Dada Sahib. They have the Bhat in them. And it doesn't have to be the full Dada Sahib, just a Mool Mantra. Start off with something small, right? So to me, it's really practicing what we want them to see. It's walking the walk. It's doing everything that you want them to do, they're watching you. So again, in the story as well, if I'm scrolling on my phone during data time, they're going to see that. So I better put the phone down. I better put the laptop away and be there for the 15 minutes to do the data side bot properly. And that's what they're going to learn from it. And then as my boys started getting older, for the youngest, they became the role model. So then they started having to mirror the same, I guess, attitudes, the same thinking, so that their little brother would see, and then they started realizing it. So I think it's really just building upon. Here on the East, we'd have a lot of camps, so that always helps bringing that home. But again, a week or 3 days or 4 days is only just that. It's really taking that essence of what they learn and then continuing that for the year. And really ingraining the Sikhi in them. It's just it's the way that I live. I don't know how to explain it. It's very odd. But I didn't realize it was odd. I just did it. And I think my husband pointed it out to me. And now I think it's just part of us. It's part of our family and it's part of a lot of people within this area that we kind of do stay in touch and we make the effort to meet each other as often as we can, or do the little practices, or even if we haven't seen each other for a year, the love is still there. So it's really just picking it up. Yeah.
Right. Thank you. Thank you. That was such a beautiful answer. Anybody else want to share what they could kind of give to their children in their toolbox to cultivate Sikhi? Anybody want to share?
Can I share one more thing? So, through my compassion cultivation work that I'm doing, it's opened up my eyes to how to see everyone. The concept of everyone's one, we're all the same, and and everyone is of the one, but how do you actually do it? Um, and what I've seen is that more I talk about it, and as you said, Raj Saran, and all your practices were not odd. I think it's so admirable. And I wish in retrospect I was so disciplined that I could have followed some of those practices. Um, but learning to forgive is one, yourself and others. So what I'm learning from all this is talking out loud and treating my children as whether they're young adults, but treating them as my equals, because if I don't have these adult deep conversations with them, then there's this disconnect, and I don't want them to just see me as their mom, but more of a partner, their cheerleader, and their comrade, because they're going to go through a lot of similar situations in the future, but we're having a lot of conversations around any meal that we're having. I'll deliberately talk about what a certain experience was for me and what happened today that made me think, oh, wow, this person is just like me. And for them um, to step outside of the small box that our community is not just the community, the Sikh community, the Punjabi community, or the Gurdwara community, but our community is the circles that we're in when we're outside of the Gurdwara, our neighborhood, our city council, our, some of the county events that are happening, or some of the organizations where they can participate and create that deeper sense of community. And so what I'm sharing with them is that they have to look outside of what the traditional sense of community is that we usually think of. Um, and that's really the only way we can start seeing everyone else just like us and similar to us rather than different than us.
Yeah, that's a great point you just made. There are different communities, obviously, that they're part of. There's a school community, there's a Gurdwara community, there's the city they live in and, activities that they're doing. So they're part of different social groups all the time, and they need to know about other groups, and they need to know what their faiths are or where their background is from. And I think it's really enriching for me as well, personally, as a mom, when I interact or interface with these other communities. And again, you're walking the walk. So, you kind of show them that you're doing it, and then they feel at ease. Okay, if mom's talking to this person, then I'm going to talk to them, or I'm going to talk to their child and not see them as different. So, yeah, that's a great point.
If I may jump in, I think it's all resonating very much with me as well. And it's how do you live your values, right? I mean, and I think Rajnarendra said it so well that you see the one in everyone, not just within the Sikh community, right? I mean, I think sometimes we create this artificial boundary that the one is only within those that have Sikhi, which in my mind is counterintuitive because the oneness is the oneness that pervades through every being. And I think that's something that we as a family believe in. You know who you are, but you give that same respect to the next person. The other thing is sort of being socially aware and working towards social justice. So being advocates, using your voice, creating practice where you stand tall where you need to. And this is particularly important because being brown in America right now has its own consequences. Being Sikh in America has always had, or anywhere, has had its own consequences. So how do you continue to live your values, especially in conflict? And the other thing about service that I think I try to think about with them is it's not just going to the Gurdwara and doing the Langar Seva. What is that unique part of yourself that Vaheguru created in you? How do you cultivate that? Because that is what you have to offer. And how do you do that with the belief that it is good? I think if we are going to recognize the oneness, that uniqueness is part of the gift we bring into the oneness to make it whole.
Mhm.
And finding the way to do it with humility and self-awareness. I think that as the kids get older, I see a lot more of the practice of it. So you have to have faith that some things you do might actually work. But what? Yeah.
Thank you, Indra Benji. And with that, I'm actually going to transition to you. So how do we as mothers navigate our different roles and responsibilities? We wear many hats, particularly career, family, self-care. You talked about it in your chapter, balancing motherhood and career. The quote from your chapter conveys this very perfectly. You say, the only way to reconcile what was needed of me from my child and my livelihood was to nurse with one hand and hold the phone with the other hand to make the deal. So delve into this a bit more and tell us your experience.
I actually very clearly remember that moment. My baby was 2 months old and I could not get out of the squall. I didn't have a backup in that time to balance. I couldn't take one over the other. And the bottom line is sometimes you don't have choice. You have to juggle, even if it's within the moment. I think it's really important to realize that you cannot have it all at the same time.
That's right.
You can have it all over time, right? And if you realize the phases that life comes in, it allows you to be patient. One thing that as mothers we do very well is sacrifice the self. And it's not even recognized within ourselves that we're doing it till sickness catches up with us, or deep exhaustion, mental, emotional, what have you. So, I mean, I think I've always worked, and after my divorce, I was obviously the sole provider in the household. So I used to run a business at till about 2015, and was like Rajendran out a lot in terms of the day, creating a support structure that allowed me to take care of the kids was essential. I had treatment that I went to for the cancer on a regular basis. You have to run the household and you've also got to run the kids' lives. And we all do it, whether, it's one thing or another. And we've never paused to say, how do we do it? We just keep doing it. And it's important to recognize, as we celebrated mothers in our last round of discussions, there is a gift that is so deeply wired within us, the deep level of competence, right? The planning, the execution, the nurturing, and the decision making. We bring so many different components of good nature to bear on nurture, right? That I think it's important to give gratitude, because these are skills, these are executive processing skills, are things that women use across their different parts of life. So the issue of balancing is, it's not about balancing in my mind, it's about prioritization and recognizing that many, many, many women have to work. There isn't a choice. We talked about guilt. And I think it's also fashioned upon us to have that guilt. It's because we are women, we have to put motherhood first and not the other responsibilities which will enable our duties as a mother to provide for our children. So I think we have to think about it from that perspective as well. How much of the guilt do we want to take on when what we're doing is bringing income in to provide for the children? And I also think it's important for a mother, both for her son and her daughter, to be seen as a full person, not just in a one-dimensional way. It's important for both genders to see their mother as somebody who can bring home the bacon and bake at home, so to speak, right? I mean, the idea of being a competent, full human being with her own ambitions, her own nurturing, her own style of nurturing. And also, I think as the kids have gotten older, showing ways in which I maintain my own boundaries so that I am healthy.
Yes.
So I think it's recognizing that we have to put the self back in the mother. We also have to recognize that every responsibility, reproductive or productive, that a mother does is for the benefit of the household. And that we have to also release burdens that are not ours to carry.
Right. Very true. I think, Sonia, you had said something yesterday, even in the conversation, that if I'm not, feeling good or I'm not at my best, I'm not going to be able to give my best. They say if your cup is empty, you're not going to be able to fill others' cups. So you have to do that for yourself first. The self-care is very important. Self-forgiveness, as we spoke about earlier too, that also needs to be there. So as Gurpreet Benji had said earlier, to forgive yourself, that if you can't be in every place all at the same time, as you said, there's, you can't have everything at the same time. It's not possible. Thank you. Is anybody else to that answer?
I
I'd love,
wanted, oh, go ahead.
no,
Go ahead,
please,
Ben.
it's okay. Go ahead.
You want me to go? Okay. I just wanted to say I had a similar story to Indra. I was working from home, I remember, and I was on a call, and one of the boys, I don't know which one it was, wouldn't stop crying. So my husband gave him to me, knowing that I was on a call, and all I could do was just nurse him. I was like, just eat. And I was on the call and I was typing, so I had the phone and I was typing, and he was just nursing. I was like, I just got to do it. And it was really funny. Obviously afterwards, I mean, it worked. So I think there is this superpower that we have, and we tend to kind of forget that we can do this. It looks, I remember my husband saying, I can't believe you just did that. I'm like, what else was I supposed to do? So I think, again, just reminding ourselves that we do have this power. And then the other thing that I wanted to say is, we're talking a lot about the mothers, and how we're feeling. And I have to say that consciously, my husband and I are now teaching, educating, showing my three boys what a mother and what a wife has to go through, and showing them that empathy, because it will be unfair to their wives if they're not fully present and fully ready to help with everything, because I wouldn't have been able to do it, obviously, without my husband or without my parents. It does take a village, and if you are blessed with that support, and if you're not, then that's where the husband, the father has to step up. And if I'm not teaching my boys that now, it will affect their relationships. And I want to break that cycle, right? So I think for me, Vaheguru, Maharaj giving me these three boys, that is my duty. That is what I have to teach them, so that they're ready to face that next phase.
Right. Yeah. I think they need to see that there is no bias. They should be carrying the same responsibilities as a daughter would, or as a woman. And going forward as a, husband and wife, I think those responsibilities should be shared out. So thank you. Anybody else want to add anything to that? Sonia, do you want to wrap up?
Arvinder, did you have something you wanted to share?
Oh yeah, Arvinder, please.
Some thought had come to me, but it's gone. I think it was something to do with like, a lot of these conversations we're having, not only to support each other and support ourselves, but also the up and coming moms and parents, right, who are going to go through this and who are listening and reading. So I think that I do want to say that there are seasons that we go through. There are seasons that um, we've had to put our own dreams on pause. And then there's other seasons where we let go of the guilt and are just like, yes, this is an opportunity that I want to go through, and I want to take the time to do this. And I'm okay with not being, you know, present as a mom in that moment, but doing the things that light me up, because when I do that, I go back and I parent from abundance. I'm a mom from a much better place. I do the things. It's not, I don't remember which one of you mentioned the mani and pedi. You're right. That's not fulfilling. But doing, like, having this conversation like we are tonight, and maybe saying no to something else, it helps me be whole, and it helps me come back and be full and complete and parent from that. So I think there are seasons that we go through. And yes, of course, there's that. I mean, those ridiculous things that I did as a mom too, trying to juggle it all and thinking if I went back, I'd be like, you know what, I'm sorry, but it's not going to happen today. And this is what I choose to do instead. But those are the choices that we made at that time. And that's okay. So I think it's recognizing, being aware, and hoping to teach and learn at the same time with our experiences.
So true. Yeah. Every stage is different, and you look back and you're just like, who was that? You know, when I see myself like 16 years ago as a new mom, I barely recognize her, but you can't go back in time, so we can only move forward. So we're just going to take a couple minutes. If anyone not in our speaking guest tonight wanted to ask a question or comment, I'm going to come to you, Amarpreet, to start, but we'll just take a few minutes to do that and then we'll wrap up. Amarpreet, who is also one of our writers, go ahead.
Hi, thank you so much for this discussion. Oh my gosh, there were so many amazing insights. I really took in a lot from what everybody had to say. Um, I just wanted to like share a reflection. It's interesting when I think about like my evolution as a mom. In the beginning, it felt um like my job was to be with my kids all the time, otherwise I wasn't being a good mom. And then the circumstances in my life changed where um I that's no longer a possibility for me, and I have to like take a bird's eye view of my children's lives and my life. And I had to like let it's kind of, yeah, be, you know, I don't know, there's so much pop psychology out there about like the nurturer and the provider and who takes on what role and all that kind of stuff. But um it's yeah, it's really like it's helped me let go of like a lot of guilt to just take a bird's eye view and look at motherhood in a different way, to say, okay, here are my three children and what kind of life do I want to give them. So it's kind of like I've become a strategist rather than like um sort of being the the person like implementing all of these things. Like I'm just sort of like, here's what needs to be done, and I am I outsource the duties to various, like I ask for help, that I ask my mom to do this, or I ask whoever is in my life, whether paid or not paid, to do these things. And I've had to let go of this. Some of it feels like a loss too, but I, like, for the greater good in my life, I'm like, okay, I actually can't be there for my kids in that way anymore, but I'm like sort of creating this bubble of safety for them, which allows them to grow in the way I want to see them grow. So that's sort of been, and sometimes it feels like a loss, like, oh, like I can't put my kids to bed, or I can't sit and read a book with them. But it's being done by somebody else, and I'm like sort of overseeing it all.
Mothers are the best project managers out there. Yeah, what you said really resonated because, I mean, I don't think I'm one of these people, but I am surrounded by people who always feel guilty asking for help. I've always been very big on asking for help, and we need it. You know, we cannot possibly do everything, and we can't feel like we have to. So, our partners, our parents, in laws, friends, even like you said, hired help, you know, whether it's a tutor or a babysitter, whoever it is, we can't do it all. We have to delegate. Is there anyone else who wanted to say anything before we wrap up?
Thank you,
Okay.
everybody.
So I just wanted to give a final thank you to everyone who joined us. Rajnarend, Indira, Gurpreet, loved your stories, of course, but it was really nice to dive in with Sona's questions and find out more of where you were coming from and explore in more detail what you mentioned in your stories. And Sona and Arvinder, thank you for taking the time to join us. It was really nice to have you, and your insights and perspectives, I think, really added a lot to our conversation.
Thank you, Sonia. It was just nurturing to be in this environment.
Agree, agree. Thank you all for sharing, and I think we're all walking away with some new insights and some new feelings of knowing we're not alone. So that's our biggest purpose with Kaurs Reimagine. So thank you for the support, and this conversation will be added to our YouTube channel shortly in case you want to share with others or just come back and revisit.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye.
Bye. Good